Hello everybody, David Shuster here. Over the weekend, the California wildfires were the backdrop to another remarkable scene, but this time it wasn't flames or destruction, it was President Trump getting corrected to his face. The Trump immolation began when the president appeared at a roundtable with local leaders and said the Federal Emergency Management Agency effort, consisting of thousands of FEMA workers, was incompetent.
I do have to say FEMA is a big disappointment. We had it working well. We had great people, but FEMA is not good anymore. FEMA doesn't even show up. It takes weeks before they even show up. And what happens is the state then relies on FEMA, and nobody does anything because FEMA doesn't show up. So
local leaders say FEMA showed up immediately after the fires began and has been working well with local firefighters in a situation that at times has been impossible. House Democrat Brad Sherman tried to make that point to President Trump politely.
Mr. President, if I can just defend FEMA a little bit.
Yeah.
They brought thousands of people in. I don't know how they're doing in other states. They're doing a good job for us here. They've got a huge center that's open from 9 in the morning till 8 at night. But also, when you have a disaster this size, you need to be able to deploy thousands of people, which they've been able to do.
Congressman Sherman then addressed Trump's calls to abolish FEMA and leave all disaster work to each state.
Now, California, if we did it on our own, maybe we'd have thousands of people.
You do.
But if Rhode Island has
You
a
do.
Palisades disaster, are they then supposed to keep
How many
thousands?
people do you have in California? 36? How many million?
Close to
How
40
many million people do you have?
But
You have 40 million people. You're not going to get a few thousand people? The problem with FEMA is they come from all over the country. They end up in arguments with your people from California because they want to do it a totally different way. And
They're getting
I can
along
live
fine.
either way, but you haven't gotten very much done with FEMA and all you have to do is look at North Carolina.
Actually, residents of North Carolina say that in most communities, FEMA has been helpful. Sherman went back to his point about the federal government being better positioned to help states deal with the disaster instead of states fending for themselves.
you can't have Rhode Island maintain a staff of thousands and thousands of people waiting to see if they have a disaster.
You know who came in and fixed North Carolina or the process? Other states, people from all over the country came. And you have the same thing. You have a lot of people from all over the country. Getting the people is not a problem. Getting the organization's a big problem. FEMA's incompetently run, and it costs about 3 times more than it should cost.
I'm hoping
we
that
can
you
spend
get
money
a
on
better run.
schools instead of giving money to bureaucracy.
Donald Trump wants to spend money on schools? Well, that's interesting given that Trump has also pledged to tear down the Department of Education, which is responsible for making sure all schools are safe, properly constructed, and adhere to basic standards. President Trump then accused Democrats of pushing insurance companies out of California.
You know, you
$1 million
did
uninsured
something,
loss.
Brad, where every insurance company in the country left California. That's why you have no insurance, because you made it so impossible. People that think like you made it so impossible. And you know,
Brad, me,
every
Mr.
insurance
President,
company.
I don't know what
I'll
you
tell
know
you this,
about my thinking.
I've never seen a state where almost nobody has insurance. And I said, what happened? And they said like 6 months ago they all left.
Even insurance industry critics say that's just not true. Insurance companies didn't all leave 6 months ago. There has been a trend for years in California of insurance becoming more difficult and expensive to obtain given the inherent disaster risks in the state, including the growing risk of wildfires caused by global warming. At the roundtable, President Trump kept returning, though, to FEMA and said the agency has been a failure.
They end up in arguments with your people from California because they want to do it a totally different way. They don't know anything. The FEMA is a very expensive, in my opinion, mostly failed situation. They don't know what they're doing. And I say, you don't need FEMA. You need a good state government.
Think of the cruelty here. We're relying on these people. They're working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're busting their ass to help us. And what kind of pep talk do they get from the president? He flies in. He's down on the ground for a couple of hours, and he says they should abolish the agency. They're doing a terrible job. He in his own inaugural speech, he insulted our firefighters. Now he comes to our community and insults the FEMA workers.
Trump is also insulting California policies that have nothing to do with the wildfires. President Trump, along with some congressional leaders, Republicans, have floated making all relief to California contingent on the state implementing Republican policies for things like voter identification. Representative Sherman hit back at that as well.
And I know you've talked about policies of California that you're not a fan of, but I've been in Congress for 28 years. I really disagree with Louisiana on their abortion policy. I disagree with them on their campaign finance policy. I disagree with North Dakota on their gun policy. And I would never turn to somebody from Louisiana and say, you keep living on your cousin's couch, because we're not going to help you rebuild until Louisiana agrees with me on a woman's right to choose. So I'm hoping that we can get these funds and that we don't punish individuals for the policies of their state. You can disagree with them, and I think you've got some ideas. I look forward to us listening.
The lawmakers then listened and heard President Trump blame the growth of the wildfires in Malibu and the Palisades on a failed California water system. Experts say the fires were fueled by unprecedented Santa Ana winds, and that no amount of water in reservoirs or in fire hydrants would have stopped the flames.
We have plenty of water here in Los Angeles. I mean, we do try not to waste it, but we're watering our lawns, and we're able to do it every day in the last 2 weeks. Our reservoirs are filled. The reason there was no water in the Palisades during that terrible fire is that the system to pipe the water up to the Palisades was designed only for foreseeable conditions. Maybe fight 5 fires in a row and keep everybody in their homes happy. We have a water system that does that, but we did not have a water system that could fight 500 house fires at the same time. And when you're up in the Palisades, maintaining water pressure, you need a good system. We had a system that would work for anything except the biggest property damage fire in the history of the country.
And now the property damage is being compounded by a federal government leader who doesn't understand the basics. Despite President Trump being corrected to his face about the cause of the fire, the success of FEMA, and the cost effectiveness of having federal disaster help instead of leaving it all to the states, there was no indication that President Trump changed his mind about anything. Still, kudos to lawmakers like Brad Sherman and others who are trying to present facts and logic to President Trump and are doing it politely. For now, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is still helping in Southern California. Homeowners who have lost everything are getting federal and local disaster assistance, including waivers on rebuilding permits. And misinformed politicians like Donald Trump are getting an earful and are being confronted directly. By the way, politicians in Denmark are now using expletives in responding to Donald Trump's efforts to acquire Greenland.
President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, f*** off.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Opus, who wrote, "If only Donnie could truly appreciate how painfully stupid he is and how he is mocked all over the world, the most ridiculed thing in history." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about a seething Donald Trump getting fact-checked in California to his face. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.